Welcome to MumAbroad's YouTube channel, where I'm joined today by Kresta Tyler Johnson, who moved to Barcelona in 2019 with her American husband and 3 children, after having previously lived in Johannesburg for 7 years. Kresta's children are 16, nearly 13, and 10. And I'm also joined by David Martí, born and raised in Barcelona. David lived in the States, Amsterdam, and Madrid as a young adult, and he now lives in a small village of only 50 inhabitants in the Montseny Natural Park, 60 kilometers north of Barcelona. He's there with his Catalan wife, 17-year-old son, and 2 daughters who are 15 and 13. Kresta and David both have children who attend Learnlife, an innovative educational hub in Barcelona that offers a self-directed approach to learning for 11 to 18-year-olds. Thank you both for joining me today.
Thank you.
Thanks.
David, let's start with you. Your son joined Learnlife in 2020, and then your oldest daughter followed in 2022. Can you tell us a little bit about their schooling up until that point?
Well, it's a little bit different, I imagine, than most of other people. We moved from downtown Barcelona to that small village when our oldest son was about to arrive. And when he was 3 years old, and we started wondering what to do in terms of schooling, my wife decided to create her own project at home with other children from the area. So that was their first experience at home in a small project. There were around 15 children until they were 7 years old. And then we did homeschooling for a couple of years. And then the last years of primary school, they joined the small public school in the town nearby. But it was quite a small and different school, considering that they were in the public system, because there were not enough children to separate them with classes, so they were all mixed up. And then when primary school finished, with another family and a couple of educators, we decided to create our own secondary school project, which is still alive in another town nearby. And after 2 years there, our oldest son decided that he wanted to know different people and more people. So we visited Learnlife in the end of December. It was in the middle of the term. And he decided immediately he wanted to join Learnlife, even though he couldn't speak almost any English, but he decided he was ready to join Learnlife. And I think for him it was really easy because he came already from outside the system, let's say. So many of the original questions that Learnlife asked him, he was ready for that. And this year, our daughter decided to take the same path. I guess for her was easier because her brother was already there. So they are now happily commuting every day from our home to Barcelona.
Kresta, it's your middle son, who's almost 13, who joined Learnlife in September 2021. Can you tell us something about his educational journey since you arrived in Barcelona?
Sure. We arrived in Barcelona and had lived previously, as you mentioned, in South Africa, where he had been at an international school there. However, when we moved here, we were hoping that we would be able to be at least semi-permanently based here, and wanted to integrate him more than delving into the typical expat community. So we selected a small trilingual Montessori school for him and the other 2 children, our first year here, in an effort to really get them enmeshed more in the local culture. It was a challenge because first of all, 2 new languages, even though they'd had some Spanish previously. And it was a small school, actually a little outside of Barcelona. And was definitely a challenge. And then COVID hit, and it was a school that prided itself on no technology and suddenly had to go completely reliant on technology. And it just, I mean, they did an excellent job for their capacity. It was just hard for my kids. And so we had already made the choice that maybe an international style curriculum in school would feel more similar to them, and they would have an easier time adjusting, that had Spanish still integrated daily. So the following year, we moved all three of them to an international school, one of the American-led schools here. And initially it was COVID restrictions, and initially for my middle son in particular, it felt much more similar, and he found some friends. However, very quickly it became apparent that there was more, for him at least, that he just was really struggling with the restrictive curriculum of the more traditional norms, and lack of flexibility inherently, as teachers felt overburdened with an incredible amount of subject material to get through, and a real lack to be adaptable to different learning styles, people thinking he thinks in a very creative, different way. And he felt himself very bored and frustrated, and it definitely became apparent that we were going to have to keep searching for something else. And we had been familiar with Learnlife since they first started, and had watched them evolve their program to a much more structured, I mean, within reason, but compared to where they began. And we had done some after school programs with them. So we revisited the idea of him joining there, thinking that might be a good scenario, and turned out to be a wonderful relief to find it again for him in terms of a schooling option. He actually started the following school year initially back at the international school, and within a week it was very apparent that he remembered exactly why this was not the place for him and did not fit, even though he had moved from elementary to middle school, which inherently had some more freedom, but still wasn't at all what he needed and was looking for. And so we made the switch to Learnlife. And for us, it was an opening and a moment for our child who suddenly liked going to school again. And it was really a wonderful place for us to be able to find for him at the time.
And he felt immediately that it was a good fit for him.
He felt immediately, emotionally, he had become so distraught that it was the emotional side we really had to focus on for him, at least initially. And emotionally, he immediately felt secure, understood, heard, and it was only, his learning was not going to happen until we could build that back up for him. And this became apparently, it was apparent immediately that this was going to be an environment that was their primary concern. They certainly understood no learning can, happen for any child until they feel secure in their environment where they are. So it was like an albatross had been taken off our shoulders that we didn't even realize we were carrying when you see your child finally happy again.
As I mentioned in my introduction, Learnlife is an innovative educational hub in Barcelona. David, what does Learnlife offer, in your opinion, that traditional schools don't?
When I try to explain it in a few words to people that don't know anything about projects outside the system, I just say no curriculum, no grades, no exams. And the first reaction of people is saying, and then what do they do? And I say, well, everything else. They can do everything else. So I would say that the major headlines are these. So there is a space for different conversations about what do they like, what are their passions, their interests, or especially if they want, they can spend hours and hours doing the same thing if in a specific moment they have a special passion about learning something. Because once my daughter, when she was in the public school for a short period of time, she asked me a question that it was really difficult for me to answer. she didn't ask the typical question, why do I have to learn this if I'm not interested in that? But the question was, why did I have to stop doing the thing I wanted to do because they forced me to go and play outside when I wanted to keep doing what I was doing at that moment. And for me, that's a key thing, just to let them be connected to their passions. The first conversation with my son after the few first days at Learnlife, we took the train back together. I waited for him outside the Learnlife, and then we would take the train back home together. And the amazing thing, his conversations were about sharing with me what he had learned that day. And then I recall that most of the conversations I had or I hear other children having with the parents are about what grade did that get today, how much homework do I have today, but it has nothing to do of what did I learn today. And I remember I went to a traditional system. I always had good grades. I always forget everything every summer. I remember because I never had like an experience that, I always had a good memory about my school. Until a few years ago, when I started realizing that because I never had a problem with grades, but nobody took care of me about my potential. Nobody asked me, maybe I wanted to do many hours of one thing. I was really good in mathematics. It was amazing for me. But okay, I had a good grade, that was it, And so the question is not only for the children that they have difficulties with the system, but even with the ones that they do well with grades, they don't complain, but what are we missing? There is something else because nobody asks you anything about, and for me it's really interesting at least to offer my children something I could not experience.
Kresta, Learnlife is certainly a talking point amongst the international community, as you know, in Barcelona. And many parents, I hear that they like the idea of Learnlife, but they worry that without accreditation, their teenagers won't be able to access university afterwards, for example, and that definitely puts people off. How important is the accreditation side of things in your mind?
Well, I think that each family has to consider what they need the accreditation for. When I certainly began the journey for my son and our family there, the accreditation was the last thing on my mind. It was more important to me, not only that my son was in a place he enjoyed going, but that the most important thing was to foster a critical mind and a love of learning, and for him to become an independent, autonomous thinker that was following his passion, figuring out what that was and then following it. And I came from a very traditional system. My husband, however, over the course of raising our children so far, we've realized that there are a lot of faults in that system. And I've heard just too many stories that I do believe you can get where you need and want to go, ultimately, if that's really where you need and want to go. And I think, each individual has to decide, do they need this accreditation? And if they do, to Learnlife's credit, they are in the status of getting the New England schools. It's a New England Association of Schools and Colleges they're in candidacy status, and they're awaiting localization to become finally accredited within Catalonia. So they have pursued that. However, it was never their initial intent, yet they recognized, this is my perspective at least, that once again, they want to be, as much as possible, offer all avenues of possibility and future pathways for each learner, depending on what's appropriate for them. And after doing a lot of discussions with other schools, they realized that this could be a hindrance to kids if they didn't have the ability to give them some type of accreditation onward. And so they have been pursuing how they can most appropriately incorporate that within their, while staying true to their ethos and paradigm, and yet ensure that kids can have that opportunity and they're not hindered by choosing this path. Yet there are so many ways now, and especially post-COVID and other, with the collaboration internationally, that I think parents have to take a deep breath and realize, even if suddenly you feel that your child needs a diploma from something, there are avenues to attain that and ensure that they can go forward to follow, their right path. And I don't know, for me, that wasn't even on the horizon when we chose to put my middle son Rory at the school. So,
David, your son is in his last year at Learnlife. Does he know what he wants to do next? And how much guidance has he been given from the educators at Learnlife?
He doesn't know exactly yet what's the next step. He's getting the guidance that he's requesting. I mean, we are respecting his rhythm and not really opening too many conversations about this subject every day, because we want him to enjoy this full year instead of being all the time thinking about next year. So he knows he won't go out of his path just in order to get an official diploma. He knows that. I mean, we hope with accreditation many more doors are open for him, but if some of them don't open, not because he doesn't have the accreditation, he won't go out of his way. He's completely sure and connected with that. So, yeah, there are moments of doubts, moments of fear, but at the same time, he knows and we know the things he doesn't want to do anymore. So we are confident with that.
Knowing what you don't want to do is a great thing, isn't it? Not just what you do want to do, but what you don't want to do. Yeah. Kresta, along with a number of other parents, you've developed something called the Urban Hub Parents Group. What is it and why did you set that up?
Well, let's see, a year ago, the school or Learnlife had reached out and said if there were parents interested in participating in, kind of an organizational group within the school, please reach out. And turned out there was a small group of us. And previously, for myself at least, I feel it's extremely important to have some role within your child's school to also demonstrate to them, if you expect them to do this every day and be present, it's as important for you to participate on some capacity. And it sort of organically evolved, this small group of parents that David is also a member of. And it just became this lovely group of volunteers who realized there wasn't kind of a cohesive, whether you want to call it a parent teacher association type group or a group of individuals kind of trying to understand maybe where there were some concerns coming from the parent community or some ideas, how best to communicate them with Learnlife. Learnlife is always evolving and growing. It's still a very young project. And we just got fortunate to start this aspect and become a collaborative body that not represents the larger community of parents, but can help voice concerns or get directly to Learnlife. We evolved into meeting bi-weekly and being just a forum where Learnlife can share with us their ideas and concerns, bounce things around, and we can do the same. And it's become just organically a really lovely connection and another solid building block on this, what's really a community. And I think that's a constant goal for both Learnlife and the people involved, is to nurture and build this community of network of incredible individuals. I mean, beyond just these amazing learners that are there are these phenomenal parents behind them with such a magnitude of skills and knowledge and resources, and they're willing to share them, and they want to be involved and bring that in to be mentors or offer workshops at the school. And I think that's one very unique side of the school and an exciting aspect. And it's really important that we help. And, Learnlife in itself can only do so much. And so it's great to have others of us that have a few minutes here and there to help, build that all and bring it together. I don't know if that really answered it, but
I love the feeling of collaboration. That's what I'm getting from what you're saying about Learnlife, and it's the learners themselves, the young people, it's the parents, and it's the educators, and it's a combination of the three things. I often find within mainstream schooling that parents are kind of pushed to the side slightly, and schools don't like it when parents get involved too much. But I feel that Learnlife is the absolute opposite, and it's very open to your input as well, which I think is really important.
Well, and I think that, we all try and treat each other with a great level of respect. So yeah. I think they're able to be open because parents come with ideas, or even if they come with concerns, they also come with potential solutions. And it's, okay, we realize that you're trying, and Learnlife's open with us. They're transparent and they say, no, we don't quite have an answer on this. However, we want to improve it, or we want to build it. If you have some ideas, please share. And that creates a different dynamic. So as opposed to being an adversarial or, a client organization kind of situation, it again nurtures and fosters hopefully more of this community, which I think is the ultimate goal, because we all are trying for the same thing, which is to empower our learners, our children, to be the best versions of themselves they can be. So we all have a vested interest to do this together. And that's where I think Learnlife, as you say, does really differ from your traditional schooling model, certainly within Catalonia. And I'm not an expert, but from what I know, there's very little dialogue and interaction. And I mean, Learnlife is very much the opposite. They try and be as accessible and open as possible because they realize that's how everybody's going to succeed. And especially if we can all do it together,
David, you're obviously, from listening to what you've said previously, you're obviously very comfortable with this kind of open way of learning and education. And as a parent, you and your wife decided to opt out of mainstream schooling from the beginning of your children's education. So I wondered what advice you would have for parents who are thinking about moving away from mainstream education, because I don't think that's an easy move for a lot of parents.
No, I think it's not an easy move because parents, I think we all are searching for security. It's the thing we want the most is the best education for our children, best future, etc., etc., etc. When you say I have experience on that, I have experience dealing with my fears, my doubts, the intensity of the process, etc. I never want to say I don't have doubts. I don't want to say I don't have fears, but I don't blame the system I've chosen once I'm dealing with these emotions, because I think it has nothing to do with it. It's easier to take decisions with the majority of society. So if something goes wrong, we can blame society, we can blame the system, we can blame somebody else, but not us. If there is somebody, maybe we don't need to blame anybody and just listen to what we really think is best for our children. And I think the world has really changed, and the educational system is still thought in like 100 years ago, with unknown people somewhere somehow deciding the subjects our children have to learn. And I don't think it works that way. And at the same time, I tell parents, these systems, these new projects are new. We are the first generation of parents involved in these projects so that they are continuing changing, evolving, etc. And I don't take that as a bad sign, but as a growing process. Probably in 2 or 3 generations, we'll have projects more mature than today, but that's life. That's the way it is.
I think it's really exciting to be part of that change as well. Kresta, we mentioned before that you have 3 children. Just one of yours is at Learnlife. So you've got 3 children at 3 different schools or different educational establishments. What would your advice be for parents who are struggling to find the right school for their children?
I would say that I think parents need to take a deep breath, and this coming from somebody, again, who's been in a very traditional mold and never thought I'd be in this position. However, I realize you have to be flexible, and that what is right for one, even if they all came from the same place, may not be right for the other. And, you know, you do your research as much as possible, you talk to as many people, and you ultimately go with your gut, what feels right. However, I do think it's critical to also look at what seems the most opportune place for your child. And each child is an individual and needs different things. And even though you may, you know, think you've found just the right thing, it may still turn out that that's not the case. And I think it's critical that parents, you know, as much as possible, take a deep breath and say, okay, that didn't work as we hoped. There must be something else. Let me keep trying until I find that right thing. And again, that right thing may change, you know, it may be a year or 2 years. And I think historically that's very scary. I think people inevitably change is hard, and they like continuity and they want stability. And of course that is necessary and optimal for kids to build friendships and relationships. However, sometimes it takes a little work, and with the flux that education is going through and all the fluctuation we've had as, you know, a world with COVID the last 2 years and whatnot, I think there are some changes afoot, and people have to just, to the best of their ability, be adaptable and flexible and keep persevering and you know, looking in different areas and different spots.
And just to finish, if you could name one thing that really stands out for you about Learnlife, what would that be? David, let's start with you.
It would be that there is a space for our children to be responsible for the future and stay connected to what they like to do and they want to do in every, and that the system listens to them when they want to suggest a change within the project and within their life. And I think that's really important, because their voice is more important than our voice.
And Kresta, for you?
That's funny that David should say that, because my thought was that the learners are truly heard and seen, and that at the very earliest start, they are considered a person and with their own views and their own perspectives that are valid and to be respected. And I think that just creates a whole new dynamic and scenario and possibilities for them to open and become these lifelong learners, really pursuing their passions at the youngest ages, because they're told and empowered from the youngest ages that what matters to them matters. And that's exciting, because that is also what will ferment change going forward to the greater world as well. So, yeah.
So now I'm going to put Learnlife's website address at the bottom of the screen. So if anybody watching today wants to find out more about Learnlife, they can take a look there. They'll also find contact details to get in touch with the educators at Learnlife. Thank you very much to both of you for telling us about your stories, your families, your experiences. And I think that really that will have given a lot of parents food for thought, parents that are listening today. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.